The Republic of Guinea Armed Forces are the armed forces of Guinea. They are responsible for the territorial security of Guinea's border and the defense of the country against external attack and aggression. Guinea's armed forces are divided into 5 branches: Army, Navy, Air Force, the Paramilitary National Gendarmerie and the Republican Guard, whose chiefs report to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who is subordinate to the Minister of Defense. In addition, regime security forces include the National Police Force. The Gendarmerie, responsible for internal security, has a strength of several thousand, and is armed with military equipment. It is aided by the Republican Guard, which provides protection for government officials. Upon independence in 1958, France cut all ties and immediately began to repatriate Guinean soldiers serving in the French army. Of the about 22,000 Guinean soldiers in French service, about 10,000 decided to remain with France. The other 12,000 were demobilized and returned to Guinea. The new armed forces were formed by incorporating some of the former French soldiers, after a careful screening process to determine political reliability, with members of the former territorial gendarmerie to form the People's Army of Guinea. By the end of January 1959, the new army had reached a strength of around 2,000 officers and soldiers. In February 1969, the Guinean government moved against the armed forces after alleging that a plot centered in Libé, the center of the Fula homeland, was planning to assassinate Touré and seize power, or, failing that, force the secession of Middle Guinea. This followed military dissatisfaction over the creation of a PDG control element in each army unit. Later, the alleged Fula connection was dropped. The accusations widened to other groups, and over 1,000 Guineans arrested. After the plot, the army was regarded by the government as a center of potential subversion, and the militia was developed as a counterforce to any military threat to the government. The army resisted the Portuguese invasion of Guinea in November 1970. Purges that followed the 1970 invasion decimated the upper ranks of the army, with 8 officers sentenced to death and 900 officers and men who had reached a certain age retired from active duty. General Normadian Keita, chief of the Combined Arms General Staff, was convicted and replaced by the Army's Chief of Staff, Namari Keita, who was promoted to general. In March 1971, elements of the Guinean military were deployed to Freetown in Sierra Leone after the Sierra Leonean president, Shaka Stevens, appeared to start losing his control of the Sierra Leonean military. Stevens visited Conakry on the 19th of March 1971, and soon afterwards, around 200 Guinean soldiers were dispatched to Freetown. 2 Guinean MiGs made a low flyover of Freetown and Touré placed the Guinean military on alert because of the serious troubles affecting the fraternal peoples of Sierra Leone. The force, also reported as numbering 300, protected Stevens, though it was shortly reduced to 100 and then to 50, plus a helicopter. The last Guinean troops were withdrawn in 1974. In early 1975, the Guinean military consisted of an army of around 5,000, an air force of 300, and a naval component of around 200. The army comprised 4 infantry battalions, 1 armored battalion, and 1 engineer battalion. In the early 1970s, the armed forces were organized into 4 military zones, corresponding to the 4 geographical regions. One of the 4 infantry battalions was assigned to each of the military zones. The zone headquarters also doubled as battalion headquarters, and acted as a supervisory element for elements of company and platoon size assigned to each of the country's 29 administrative regions. The only concentration of troops in Conakry appeared to be the armored battalion, with a modest number of Soviet medium tanks manufactured in the late 1940s, as well as Soviet APCs, and elements of the engineer battalion. The armed forces, though formally responsible for defending the country's territorial integrity, were really during that period focused upon national development tasks, including agricultural, industrial, and construction tasks. The engineer battalion had companies in Conakry, Kankan, and Bokeh, and was engaged in constructing and repairing buildings and roads. increasing mistrust of the regular armed forces after the Labe plot led to the militia assuming greater importance. The militia had grown out of a 1961 Democratic Party of Guinea decision to create workplace committees for the defense of the revolution. These committees were encouraged by party officials to report dishonest practices such as theft and embezzlement of funds which might endanger the achievements of the revolution. The PDG youth arm, the youth of the African Democratic Revolution, was especially exhorted to report irregularities and crime to party or police authorities. Units.